By the time my mother rang my doorbell, she had already taken my 10-year-old daughter to a river and baptized her after I had forbidden it in writing. Now Brenda stood on my porch holding a spotless white dress and asking me to host the celebration. Behind her stood 12 people from New Mercy Fellowship with balloons, foil pans, wrapped gifts, and a sheet cake that said, "Welcome to the family, Zoe." The original river dress, cleaned but still pale where mud had stained the hem, hung on the coat hook inside my hall. Zoe froze halfway down the stairs when she saw the new one in her grandmother's hands. Mom smiled as if the porch belonged to her. "Put the food in your kitchen," calls Zoe down, "and do not make this ugly. Everyone came because they love her." My father stood behind the cake with both hands under the cardboard tray, and he would not look at me. One woman lifted her phone, so I stepped into the doorway and blocked the view of my child. I had already watched the church video. I had heard Zoe ask whether I knew what was happening, and I had heard my mother answer, "Your mom said yes in her heart." The church file showed that nobody had called me or received permission from me. My email showed that I had said no. The party was meant to make her lie look like a family decision. I used to think keeping the peace was the kindest thing I could do. By the end of that Saturday, I understood that peace built on a child's silence was not peace at all. To understand why my mother believed she could turn a secret baptism into a party at my house, you need to know what New Mercy Fellowship meant in our family. I grew up outside Knoxville, Tennessee, in a brick ranch house with a steep driveway and a church calendar on the refrigerator. My mother could tell the year by vacation Bible school themes. My father could tell it by football seasons. I could tell it by the color of the dresses Mom bought for Easter. New Mercy Fellowship was not just where we went on Sundays. It was where my parents had friends, status, purpose, and a version of themselves they trusted. Mom ran children's programs for almost 20 years. Dad handled sound on Sunday mornings and fixed anything with a loose hinge. People called them dependable. They were. I became a school psychologist because I was good at hearing what children could not say directly. A stomachache could mean a bully. A missing homework folder could mean a parent was gone again. A child who said, "I don't care," often cared so much that the feeling scared them. At work, I could sit beside pain without rushing it. At home with my mother, I still rushed. I explained too much. I softened clear answers. I offered alternatives before she had accepted the first no. Every time I did that, she treated the explanation like a loose thread. She pulled until the whole boundary came apart. Zoe was born on a rainy morning in March. She came out furious, red-faced, and loud enough to startle a nurse in the hall. Noah held her against his chest and said, "Well, she has an opinion." He was right. She had many. We had planned to let Zoe learn about faith without forcing a promise before she understood it. We took her to church sometimes. We read stories from the Bible and books about other traditions. Noah said belief should be a door she could open, not a room adults locked behind her. Mom heard only the part she feared, and she heard that we were delaying baptism. She heard that her granddaughter might grow up outside the church, and at first, she made jokes. She bought a tiny silver cross and said it was for whenever you two stop overthinking. Noah laughed. I put it in a drawer. When Zoe was 4, Noah died from a brain aneurysm. There was no warning, and he taught school on a Thursday and never woke up on Friday. For months, I lived by lists. Call the insurance company. Pack Zoe's lunch. Sign the condolence cards. Wash 1 load of clothes. Breathe until bedtime. My parents carried us through parts of that year, and Dad repaired the back fence. Mom took Zoe on Wednesday afternoons so I could attend grief counseling, and she filled my freezer. She sat on the kitchen floor when I could not stand and sorted socks into pairs. I will never pretend those things meant nothing. They meant a great deal. They also became a debt in my mother's mind, and she never said it plainly. She did not need to, and whenever I resisted her, she mentioned that year. We held you together. We kept Zoe stable. We were there when nobody else knew what to do. All of it was true. None of it gave her ownership. The church tried to help too. Most people were gentle. A few were not, and one man told me Noah's death was part of a plan. A woman I barely knew said grief was a test of obedience. Mom stood beside me and nodded because she thought agreement looked faithful. I went home and vomited. I stopped attending New Mercy that summer, but I did not announce it. I just stopped. For a while, Sunday mornings became pancakes and long walks with Zoe. Later, we visited another church twice, and we left when Zoe got restless. Nobody chased us into the parking lot. Mom treated my absence like an illness. She sent sermon links. She left devotionals in my mailbox. She asked Zoe what songs she had learned in Sunday school, although Zoe had not attended. When I told her to stop questioning a child about my choices, she pressed her lips together and said, "I am trying to make sure she has a foundation." "She has one," I said. "It just doesn't look like yours." That sentence lived between us for years. Mom repeated it whenever she wanted proof that I had rejected everything she valued. I repeated it to myself whenever I needed courage. The truth was less dramatic. I had not rejected faith, and I had rejected being managed through it. By the time Zoe was 8, she noticed the tension. She asked why Grandma prayed before lunch, and I did not always do it. I told her people practice belief in different ways. She asked if Dad was in heaven. I said I hope so, and that hope was honest. Mom gave a firmer answer. "Of course he is," she told Zoe, "and he wants to see you there someday." I heard it from the kitchen and nearly dropped a plate. That night, after Zoe went home with me, I called Mom. "Do not use Noah to frighten her." I comforted her. "You told her she has to believe what you believe to see her father again." I said no such thing. "You put the idea in the room and let a child finish it." Mom went silent. Silence was one of her best tools, and it made other people fill the space with apologies. I did not. Dad called the next morning. "Your mother cried all night." "I'm sorry she is hurt." That is not the same as apologizing. "No," I said, "it is." He sighed like I had failed a simple test. "You know what she meant." That phrase shaped my family. You know what she meant. It excused words after they landed, and it turned harm into a misunderstanding. It made the injured person responsible for translating cruelty into love. I set a clear rule, and my parents could answer Zoe's questions about their own beliefs. They could not tell her what she believed, what Noah wanted, or what would happen to her after death. They agreed. For a while, they followed it. I wanted Zoe to keep her grandparents, and she loved helping Dad plant tomatoes. She loved Mom's cinnamon toast and the way Mom let her use the good scissors for crafts. I told myself supervised visits were not always needed. I told myself people could respect a line once they saw it. That was my weakness, and I treated every broken boundary like a new lesson, not evidence. I believed the next explanation would be the clear one. I kept searching for the sentence my mother could not reinterpret. There was no such sentence because misunderstanding was not the problem. Control was. The first direct request came in February, a few weeks before Zoe turned 10. Mom invited us to lunch at her house. She served chicken salad on croissants and waited until Zoe went outside with Dad before she spoke. "New Mercy is doing River Sunday again in May," she said. "Pastor Grant is opening a class for older children." I knew where this was going. That sounds nice. Zoe is old enough now. Old enough for the class, for baptism. I set down my glass. "No," Mom blinked. She expected a discussion. "You have not even heard the details." I do not need them. Zoe has not asked to be baptized. She asks me questions all the time. Questions are not consent. She believes April. She is curious. Those are not the same thing. Mom folded her napkin into a smaller square. "You are letting your anger at the church become her inheritance." I felt the old pull to defend every part of my life. I almost explained the books Zoe and I had read, the services we had visited, and the conversations we had after Noah died. Then I stopped. A boundary did not need a closing argument. She will decide when she understands what she is choosing, I said. Nobody signs her up, nobody takes her to a class, and nobody puts her in front of a congregation. Mom looked toward the sliding door. Zoe was crouched beside Dad in the garden, pressing seeds into dark soil. What if she asks me? Tell her to ask me too. You want to be the gatekeeper. I am her mother. The words came out harder than I intended. Mom leaned back. Hurt crossed her face, and some of it was real. She had helped raise Zoe through the worst year of our lives. She had also started confusing access with authority. Dad came inside with dirt on his knees, and Mom told him I was closing a spiritual door. He did not ask what I had said. He put both hands on the counter and looked tired. Could we not make this a fight? He asked. It is not a fight, I said. It is an answer. Zoe came in before anyone replied. She held a paper cup with 3 tomato seeds under the soil. Mom smiled at her so quickly that the change frightened me more than anger would have. On the drive home, Zoe asked what we had argued about. I told her the truth in simple words. Grandma hoped she would be baptized soon. I thought it should be her choice when she was older and understood more. How old? She asked. There is no magic number. What happens if I never want to? Then you do not. She watched the highway. Will Grandma be mad? That is Grandma's feeling to manage. I said the right words. I did not yet understand how often Zoe had already been managing that feeling. 2 days later, Mom sent me a long email. She wrote that baptism was not a punishment, that children were capable of sincere faith, and that Noah would be heartbroken by my resistance. She included 3 links and a photograph of the river behind the church retreat property. I replied with 6 lines. I wrote that the answer was no, and I wrote that Noah was not to be used in this conversation. I wrote that Zoe could attend family meals at the church only if Mom asked first and stayed with her. I ended with 1 sentence in its own paragraph. There will be no baptism, preparation class, or public faith commitment without my direct written consent. Mom answered, received. I printed both emails. That was not something I usually did. At work, I documented meetings because records protected children. At home, I still relied on memory and goodwill. Something about that single word made me hit print. The pages went into a green folder in my desk, but I did not call it evidence. I called it clarity. March was busy. Zoe turned 10. We had 6 girls in our living room, 2 pizzas, 1 collapsed craft table, and glitter in places glitter should never reach. Mom and Dad came early to help, and Mom brought a wrapped box tied with a blue ribbon. Inside was a white dress. It was simple, with short sleeves and tiny covered buttons down the back. The skirt fell below Zoe's knees. It was not an Easter dress. It was not a party dress either. It looked ceremonial. Zoe held it against herself. Is this for me? Mom smiled. For a special day. I met her eyes. What special day? Whatever day she chooses. The room was full of children. I did not want to create a confrontation beside a bowl of cheese puffs. I took the dress, folded it, and put it back in the box. After the party, I carried the box to Mom's car. Take it home. It is a birthday gift. It is pressure in a box. You see threats everywhere now. No, I see the same request wearing a ribbon. Dad loaded folding chairs into the trunk. He heard us. He kept working. Mom took the box from me. Someday, Zoe will ask why you were so afraid of this. I am not afraid of baptism. Then why are you stopping it? Because you want her answer before she has one. Mom's face changed. The warmth left first. Children need guidance. They also need room. She needs certainty. No, you need certainty. That landed. She put the box in the trunk and slammed it harder than necessary, and Dad flinched. I went inside and cleaned frosting from the baseboards. For the next 2 months, Mom behaved perfectly, but she did not mention River Sunday. She did not send links. She asked before taking Zoe anywhere. She even came to a school art show and complimented a clay dragon that looked like a potato with teeth. I relaxed. People ask why someone trusted a relative after a warning sign. Trust does not always return because the warning disappeared. Sometimes it returns because daily life is exhausting and vigilance costs too much. In early May, my district scheduled a weekend crisis response training in Nashville. It was required for my new role. I planned to drive down Friday after school and return Sunday afternoon. My usual sitter had a family wedding. Zoe wanted to stay with my parents. She had not slept there in months, but she missed the garden and their old beagle, Tucker. I called Mom. This is a regular weekend, no church events. We have heard you. No classes, no service, no River Sunday activity. April, it is not even River Sunday. She was right. The public event was listed for the following weekend, and I felt foolish for repeating myself. I know, I still need you to say it. We will not take her to be baptized. The wording was exact. I let out a breath. Thank you. Dad picked Zoe up Friday evening. I walked her to his truck with a backpack, a library book, and an inhaler she almost never needed. Dad checked the inhaler date because that was the kind of detail he noticed. We will bring her home Sunday by 4, he said. Mom texted that night, and there was a picture of Zoe making popcorn. Saturday morning brought another picture of pancakes shaped like bears. In the afternoon, Zoe sent me a message about Tucker stealing a sock. Everything looked normal. Saturday evening, my call went unanswered. Mom texted that they were outside and the signal was poor, and I asked where. She wrote, church picnic property, just dinner with friends. I stared at the message. The retreat property sat beside the little river, and it was where New Mercy held River Sunday. I called again. No answer. I called Dad. No answer. I wrote, bring her home tonight. Mom replied 10 minutes later. She is having fun. Stop turning everything into danger. I left the training hotel and called Zoe's tablet, and it rang until voicemail. Then Dad called. April, settle down. Put Zoe on. She is changing clothes. My hand tightened around the phone. Changing into what? There was a pause. It lasted one breath too long. She spilled lemonade, he said. Bring her home. We have been invited to stay for supper. I am not asking. Dad lowered his voice. Your mother said you knew about the picnic. I knew nothing about the picnic. You knew they used the property. Put my daughter in the truck, he exhaled. You are 3 hours away. It was not an answer, and it was a reminder that I could not reach them. I grabbed my car keys. My training partner, Nina, saw me near the elevator and asked what happened. I told her I was driving home. She looked at the rain hitting the hotel windows and offered to come, and I said no. That was another mistake, and I was used to handling family trouble alone. Before I reached the garage, Zoe called. Mom, her voice was small. Music played somewhere behind her. Are you okay? Yes. Where are you? At the river place. What are you wearing? She did not answer. Zoe, you are not in trouble. I need the truth. A white dress. The elevator doors opened. I did not move. Why are you wearing it? Grandma said there is a practice. A practice for what? Someone called Zoe's name. I heard Mom say, we need her back. Zoe whispered, I have to go. No, you do not. Stay on the phone. The call ended. I drove out of Nashville in heavy rain. My hands shook so hard that I pulled into a gas station before I reached the interstate. I called the county sheriff's non-emergency line and tried to explain. My daughter was with her grandparents, who had permission for the weekend. I believed they were taking her to a religious event against my instructions. The dispatcher was kind. She also told me what I already knew. Unless Zoe was in immediate danger or they refused to return her, this was likely a family matter. I could request a welfare check, but officers could not litigate a baptism beside a river. I requested the check. A deputy called 25 minutes later, and he had reached the property. Zoe was safe. She was dressed in white. The group described the gathering as a rehearsal and family picnic. My parents promised there would be no ceremony that night. Did you speak to my daughter alone? I asked. No, ma'am, she was surrounded by family and church members. Did she say she wanted to be there? She said she was okay. That word could mean many things. I knew that better than most. I drove home anyway, and by the time I reached my parents' house, it was after midnight. The porch light was on. Dad opened the door before I knocked. "You did not have to drive through a storm," he said. "Where is she?" "Asleep. I am taking her home." Mom appeared in the hallway wearing a robe. "You are going to wake her and scare her because you worked yourself into a panic. You put her in that dress. It was a rehearsal. For the baptism, I refused." For a possible baptism, she wanted to see what it felt like. I walked past them. Dad caught my elbow, not hard, but enough to stop me, and I looked at his hand. He let go. Zoe was asleep in the guest room. Her hair was damp. A white garment bag hung on the closet knob, and mud had dried along its bottom edge. I woke her gently. She looked confused, then frightened when she saw my face, and I softened it at once. "You are not in trouble." "We are going home." Mom stood in the doorway. "She has had a full day." "So have I." I packed Zoe's things. The garment bag remained on the knob. I did not touch it, and I thought leaving it behind meant leaving the argument behind. I was wrong. On the drive home, Zoe fell asleep against the window. At a red light, I saw a pale line of dried water on her hair near the temple. I told myself it came from rain. Sunday morning, Mom texted before 8. "Your behavior last night was humiliating. We expect an apology." I did not answer. At noon, a mother from Zoe's school sent me a social media link. Her message said, "I thought you should see this before Zoe does." The church livestream had been posted publicly. The thumbnail showed my daughter standing waist-deep in the river. The timestamp showed that the livestream had begun 43 minutes after the deputy reported that no ceremony would happen that night. I watched the video once without sound, then I watched it again with the volume high. The river was brown from spring rain. Folding chairs lined the bank, and a guitar player stood under a pop-up tent. Zoe wore the white dress from her birthday box, and the blue ribbon was tied around her waist. Mom stood beside her with one hand on her shoulder, and Dad was near the camera. Pastor Grant faced Zoe in the water. The public part lasted less than 2 minutes. Pastor Grant asked Zoe if she understood baptism as a public expression of faith. Zoe looked toward the bank before she answered. Mom nodded, and Zoe said yes, but the word was almost lost under the guitar. Then Pastor Grant asked whether her parents supported her decision. The camera was still rolling, and Zoe leaned toward Mom and whispered, "Does my mom know?" Mom bent close. Her voice was clear. "Your mom said yes in her heart." Zoe looked at the water. Pastor Grant must not have heard, and he placed one hand behind her shoulders and continued. I paused the video before he lowered her into the river, and my body refused the next image. I knew what had happened, and I had seen the wet hair, the dress, and the mud. Still, knowing and watching were different injuries. I closed the laptop. Then I opened it again. This time, I watched my father, and he stood beside the camera with his arms folded. When Zoe asked about me, his eyes moved toward Mom. He heard. He did nothing. The clip ended with applause. Mom wrapped Zoe in a white towel. A woman handed her flowers. Someone called, "Where is April?" Mom answered. "She gave us her blessing, but crowds are hard for her." I did not remember standing up. I found myself in the laundry room with both hands on the dryer. The machine was not running, yet the room seemed to vibrate. Zoe came in wearing pajamas. "Are you mad?" The question cut through everything. "Not at you." She looked toward the laptop. "You saw it." "Yes." Grandma said it was going to be a surprise. I sat on the floor so we were eye level. "Tell me what happened from the beginning." Her eyes filled. "Am I in trouble with God?" "No." "Are you sure?" "I am sure you are not in trouble with me. I do not believe God punishes children for what adults arrange." That answer was not perfect, and it was honest enough to give her room. Zoe picked at a loose thread on her pajama sleeve. The preparation had started weeks earlier. Mom had been using their Saturday garden time to read a baptism booklet with her. She called it Grandma School. She told Zoe not to mention it because I would worry before the surprise was ready. "Did you ask to be baptized?" I said. "I said maybe." "What did Grandma say?" "She said maybe means your heart is saying yes and your brain is scared." I closed my eyes for 1 second, and at work, I had heard adults turn hesitation into permission. I had never expected that language in my mother's kitchen. Zoe said Mom showed her the white dress again, and she said Noah would see the baptism from heaven. She said Dad had cried when he heard Zoe might do it. Did Grandpa cry? I did not see him. Grandma said he did. What happened at the river? They practiced in the afternoon, then people came for dinner. Pastor Grant asked if I was ready. I asked if you were coming. What did Grandma say? That you loved me but could not be there because church made you sad. Zoe's face crumpled. I thought saying no would make everybody mad. I moved closer. Did you want to say no? I wanted more time. There it was. Not refusal. It was not consent, but a child's request for more time pressed flat by adults who needed a cleaner answer. I held her while she cried, but I did not ask whether the baptism counted. I did not tell her what she should believe about it. The adults had already put too much meaning on her body for one weekend. When she calmed down, she asked, "Can people get unbaptized?" I do not know what different churches believe about that. Can I take it back? You can always say what you understood and what you did not. You can decide what the day means to you, but nobody else gets to decide that part. She nodded, but she did not look relieved. Some choices cannot be restored by explaining that they were never freely made. I called Mom from the kitchen. Zoe stayed in the living room with headphones and a cartoon, and I kept my voice low. You baptized her. We helped her follow her heart. She asked for more time. She was nervous. Children get nervous before important things. You told her Noah wanted it. He would have. You do not get to speak for my dead husband. Mom inhaled sharply. Do not use that tone with me after everything we did for you. You told the church I approved. I told them you supported Zoe's spiritual life. That is not what they asked. You were not there, because you hid it. You would have stopped her. Yes, the word came out clean. Mom had expected me to deny it. She lowered her voice. Then I did what had to be done. I felt something inside me settle. For years, I had treated our conflict as a communication problem. She had just admitted that she understood my answer. She simply believed her judgment outranked it. Do not contact Zoe, I said. Do not come to my house. I will reach out when I decide what happens next. You cannot cut off her grandparents because you are angry at God. This is not about God. It is always about God, April. No, this is about you. I ended the call. Dad called 6 times. On the 7th, I answered. I am not defending the way your mother handled it, he said. You stood there. I thought Zoe wanted it. You heard her ask if I knew. I thought Brenda had talked to you. You were on the phone when she promised there would be no baptism. He was silent. Did you know before I left for Nashville? I knew there might be an opportunity. Did you know about the class? I knew they were reading. Did you wait for the deputy to leave? Another silence. Every answer arrived by what he would not say. You helped plan it. I drove them, your mother planned it. You took my daughter to the river. I did not want a blow-up, so you avoided one with Mom and created one with me? That is not fair. It is exact. Dad's voice cracked. I love that child. Then you should have protected her right to ask for time. He began to say my name. I ended the call. The next morning, I kept Zoe home from school. I also called my supervisor and took a personal day. My professional training told me to slow down, gather facts, and center the child. My body wanted to drive to my parents' house and throw the white dress onto their lawn. I wrote a timeline, and I saved the live stream before it could disappear. I took screenshots of the post, the caption, and the comments. I printed my email to Mom and her one-word reply, then I called New Mercy. A receptionist transferred me to Pastor Grant, and his voice changed when I introduced myself. April, I have been trying to reach you. You have my correct number. There was a pause. The registration sheet listed Brenda as the family sponsor. The parent approval line said consent had been confirmed through her. Through her is not from me. I understand that now. What did your church receive directly from me? He did not rush his answer. Nothing. Brenda told our children's director that you had approved the baptism by phone, that you could not attend, and that contacting you would reopen your grief. We should have called you anyway. I want every record about that decision, every message about my supposed approval, and the full video. I also want the public clip removed while you review this. We can remove it today. Do not edit it first. We will preserve the original. His tone was careful now. Mine was too. Careful did not mean calm. Pastor Grant asked whether Zoe was safe. I told him she was, and he asked whether she wanted to speak with him. I said not now. I am deeply sorry, he said. Did you ask her whether she wanted more time? I asked whether she was ready. She told me she had said maybe during preparation. I did not know that. Who did? He had no answer. By noon, the video was gone from the church page, but 3 relatives had already shared it. Mom had posted still photographs with the caption, "A promise fulfilled." I sent one message. Remove every image of Zoe from your pages. You do not have permission to post her. Mom replied, "You cannot erase a holy day because you are embarrassed." I reported the images and sent the links to the church. That afternoon, a padded envelope arrived by courier. Inside was the sponsor sheet, a staff note, and the email Brenda had used to keep anyone from calling me. The sponsor sheet was in Mom's handwriting. Under parental approval, a staff member had written, confirmed through grandmother. Mother does not want direct contact because of grief history. Mom's email said, April has given her blessing, but new mercy still overwhelms her because of Noah. Please do not reopen that pain. She trusts Tom and me to handle the day. I read it 3 times. Mom had used my grief as a shield around her lie. She had made checking with me sound cruel, and the church had accepted comfort as a substitute for consent. The file also included a message from the children's director asking, should we call April ourselves? Mom replied, please do not. She asked me to handle this, and another discussion will only upset Zoe. I called Pastor Grant again. Your church baptized my child without speaking to me or receiving anything from me. I know. What are you doing about it? He said the board would review the decision, and the church would document that no direct parental consent had been obtained. They had relied on a grandmother's statement without a single direct response from me. That is a failure, he said. Yes. Will you remove my name as an approving parent? We can correct the administrative record. We cannot describe the baptism as if it never happened. I am not asking you to change theology. I am asking you to stop recording a lie. He understood the distinction. We scheduled a meeting for Wednesday morning. I asked that Mom and Dad not be told until after I had seen the full file, and Pastor Grant agreed. That evening, Zoe asked why Grandma had not called, and I said I had asked for space. Is she mad at me? No. Will I still see her? I do not know yet. Zoe began crying, and I wanted to promise that nothing important would change. That would have comforted both of us. It also would have been another adult lie meant to control a child's feelings. I know you love them, I said. I love them too. Loving someone does not make every visit safe. She wiped her face. Grandma is safe. Most of the time, yes. This time, she made you responsible for keeping a secret and for making adults happy. That is not safe for your feelings. Zoe thought about it. She did not hurt me. Hurt is not only bruises. I hated how clinical that sounded, so I tried again. She put you in the middle. I should have noticed sooner. Are you mad at yourself? Yes. Are you in trouble? Despite everything, I laughed. No. She leaned against me, and we sat on the couch until the room grew dark. On Wednesday, I met Pastor Grant in a conference room at New Mercy. The walls held photographs of mission trips and children's choirs. I recognized several faces from my childhood, and my own picture had once been on a wall like that. The children's director, Melanie Price, joined us, and she looked about my age. Her hands shook when she opened the file. "I should have called you," she said. "Brenda said contact would trigger your grief. I thought I was respecting your privacy." "That is why she chose that story," Melanie nodded. "I see that." She gave me the original video file, and the camera had captured more than the public clip. Before the baptism, Zoe stood behind the tent with Mom and Melanie. Zoe said, "Can I wait until next time?" Mom crouched in front of her. "Sweetheart, everyone is here now." Grandpa invited Pastor Grant. "The dress was made for you, and sometimes fear tries to steal a blessing." Zoe looked at Melanie. "Will my mom be mad?" Melanie answered. "Your grandmother says she is proud of you." Mom took Zoe's hands. "Your mom said yes in her heart, she just cannot say it out loud yet." The video kept running as they walked toward the river. Melanie covered her mouth. "I did not remember that part." "I will." Pastor Grant turned off the monitor. He looked sick. I asked one question. "If Zoe had said no again, would you have stopped?" Melanie whispered, "Yes." But she learned that maybe was not allowed. No one argued. Pastor Grant offered to meet with my parents and correct them. I said he could address their conduct as church members, and he could not repair my family for me. He asked what I wanted from the church. I had made a list. Remove every public image. Correct the record to state that parental consent had not been obtained. Send written notice to every staff member who worked with minors that grandparents could not authorize participation unless they were legal guardians or had direct documented permission. Require staff to speak with a child away from the adult who brought them before any future baptism. Preserve the video and all related records. Pastor Grant read the list. "That is reasonable," Melanie said. "It should have been standard already." I also asked for a written apology to Zoe that did not tell her what the baptism meant. She deserved an apology for the process, not another adult interpretation of her soul. They agreed. Before I left, Pastor Grant said, "Your mother believed she was protecting something sacred." "So did I," he looked at me. "My daughter's right to mean her own yes," I said. That was the first time I understood the conflict in one sentence. Pastor Grant called Mom after the meeting. Within an hour, she wrote to our extended family group. "April is trying to punish New Mercy because Zoe chose baptism. Please pray that grief stops controlling her decisions." Relatives called with advice about forgiveness, but nobody asked what Zoe had said behind the tent. I wanted to post the full clip beneath Mom's message. I did not want strangers replaying the most confused minute of my daughter's life. I kept the evidence private, and Mom's version traveled faster. At school, another child asked Zoe why her mother hated church. Zoe went to the nurse with a stomachache. I found her on the paper-covered exam table. "Emma said you made the church delete me. The church removed a video that should not have been public. Then why can nobody see it?" The question was fair. Privacy can feel like shame after somebody else has made your life public. "You decide who knows," I said. "Grandma decided for you. I am giving that choice back." Zoe stared at her sneakers. "I do not want the video online. Then it stays down. I also do not want people to think I am embarrassed. You can say the day was complicated. You do not owe anyone the whole story." That afternoon, I removed Mom and Dad from the school pickup list and canceled their emergency access. I changed the garage code, collected Mom's spare key, and blocked both parents from Zoe's tablet. My written boundary allowed no unsupervised contact for 3 months, no posts about Zoe, and no discussions with her about baptism, heaven, Noah, or my spiritual life. Dad called it cruel. Mom wrote, "You cannot place conditions on family." I answered, "I just did." 2 weeks later, a package arrived with the original white dress. Mom had washed away the mud and pressed the blue ribbon flat. A note pinned to the collar said, "You can wash away dirt, not grace." For one wild second, I wanted to cut the dress into strips. Instead, I put it in a garment bag. Destroying it would have been another adult deciding what Zoe's experience was allowed to mean. I told Zoe she could keep it, donate it, or leave it alone. "Can it stay where I do not have to look at it?" she asked. I hung it in my bedroom closet. The church sent Zoe a plain language apology. Pastor Grant wrote that adults had failed to verify permission and had not listened when she asked for more time. He did not tell her what the baptism meant. "Do you think it was fake?" Zoe asked. "I think something important was done without giving you enough space. Different people will believe different things about it. You can decide what it means to you later." "What if I decide it means nothing?" "That is allowed." "What if I decide it means something?" "That is allowed too." She folded the letter and put it in her desk. Mom called the apology an attack and resigned from the children's program before the board finished its review. Dad stopped volunteering with sound. Then Dad wrote to me. He said he had known the plan was wrong when I called from Nashville, but he had felt trapped between Mom and me. He did not write that Zoe had been trapped too. I answered once, "You were the adult with the truck keys. She was the child in the dress." In July, Dad appeared at the edge of the camp parking lot, but he did not approach Zoe. He waited beside his truck until I walked over. "I wanted to see that she is okay," he said. "You cannot come here. I did not speak to her. You let her see you." His eyes moved past me, and Zoe stood with her group near the pavilion. She had seen him. Her face was bright with hope and fear. Dad looked older than he had in May. "I miss her." "I know. Your mother is falling apart. That is not Zoe's job to fix." "Could we meet once? You, me, your mother, maybe the pastor, and no children's committee. No social media. Just talk." I should have said no. Nothing in Mom's messages suggested she was ready, but I was tired of watching Zoe scan parking lots. I was tired of being the wall between people she loved. I made a professional mistake in a personal place. I confused a structured meeting with a safe meeting. "One meeting," I said. "At my house, Saturday afternoon. Only you, Mom, and Pastor Grant. Zoe decides whether she joins. No gifts. No prayer circle, and no baptism discussion unless Zoe brings it up. No guests." Dad nodded too quickly. "Thank you. I will send the rules in writing." "Of course." I sent them that night. Dad replied, "Agreed." Mom did not answer. The next morning, I found a printed invitation in Zoe's backpack. It was cream-colored with a blue border. At the top was a photograph of the river. Beneath it were the words, "A celebration of Zoe's new life and our family's healing." My home address appeared at the bottom. The invitation said Saturday at 2. Guests were asked to bring a favorite scripture verse for Zoe's keepsake box. The host line read, "With love from her mother and grandparents." I sat at the kitchen table until the letters stopped moving. "Where did you get this?" I asked. Zoe's face went pale. "Maddie gave it to me at camp. Her grandma got one at church." "Did Grandma talk to you?" "No. Did you know about a party?" She shook her head. "Are we having one?" "No." Relief crossed her face so fast that I almost missed it. That was the moment my mistake became useful. I had been trying to preserve a path back to my parents. The invitation showed me what Mom wanted from the meeting: proof, not understanding. The church had corrected its record, and some friends had begun asking questions. Mom needed photographs of a smiling family inside my house. She needed my address, my food, and my silence to turn the secret baptism into a shared celebration. I called Dad. "What did you agree to?" "A conversation." Mom sent invitations. He sounded genuinely confused. "What invitations?" I read the title. He swore under his breath. "I did not know. Do not tell me you are trapped." "I am calling her now." "No." "I am calling both of you." I started a group call. Mom answered on the second ring. "The invitations are lovely, are they not?" she said. "There is no party. People want to support Zoe. They were not invited by me. They were invited by family, not to my house. You agreed to host. I agreed to a private meeting with 3 adults. That would look punitive. Zoe deserves joy. Zoe looked relieved when I said there was no party. Mom's voice sharpened. You led her to that answer. The accusation was almost elegant. She had pressured a child into baptism, then accused me of influencing the child by listening. Cancel every invitation, I said. It is too late. It is 3 days away. People have bought gifts. Carol ordered the cake. Cancel it. You want me to call 12 people and say my daughter is banning a celebration because she cannot tolerate faith? I want you to tell them you used my address without permission. Dad said, Brenda, cancel it. Mom ignored him. April, if you humiliate us again, there may be no coming back from this. I looked at the invitation, and my name appeared beneath the words with love. You already used my home as a stage, I said. Do not come Saturday. She ended the call. Dad called back alone. I will stop her. You have said that without saying it for years. I mean it. Then do not bring her, he promised. I did not believe him. I called Pastor Grant. He had not seen the invitation. Mom had used an old contact list and called the meeting a family reconciliation. Pastor Grant offered to email everyone and correct it. I almost said yes. Then I stopped. If the pastor canceled the party, Mom would say a church leader had turned against her. If I left town, she would say I had stolen Zoe's celebration. If I stayed silent, people would arrive and mistake my shock for consent. I needed to speak for my own home. Please do not cancel it for me, I said. Come at 2 if you are willing, not as a mediator, as a witness to what your office found. He was quiet. Are you sure? No, I am still doing it. That night, I showed Zoe the invitation again. You do not have to be downstairs on Saturday. Will Grandma come? Probably. Will she yell? I will not let her stay if she does. Do I have to tell people I did not want it? No. Can you tell them I asked for more time? Yes, if you want me to. She thought for a long moment. Tell them I asked. Do not play the part where I cry. I will not. That was consent, specific, limited, revocable. It sounded nothing like yes in her heart. I spent Friday preparing. I did not bake, I did not decorate, and I moved the green folder from my desk to the entry table. I printed the corrected church record, Mom's false approval message, my original email, and the invitation. I put the white dress in its garment bag and hung it on the coat hook beside the door. I also wrote a notice for my parents. It stated that they had no permission to enter my home, school, workplace, or Zoe's activities without a direct invitation. Future contact would require family counseling with a licensed professional chosen by me and a truthful apology that named what they had done. The notice was not a court order. It did not pretend to be one, and it was a boundary in writing with no loose thread. At 1:50 on Saturday, Zoe went upstairs with headphones, a sketchbook, and Tucker's old photograph. The dog had died the year before. Looking at him helped her feel steady. At 1:55, Pastor Grant parked across the street. At 1:58, a minivan pulled up behind him. At 2, my mother rang the bell. When I opened the door, she was holding a white dress. For 1 second, I thought she had taken the original from my closet. Then I saw the truth. This one was new, almost identical, with a brighter blue ribbon and no mud at the hem. She had bought a clean version of the day she wanted everyone to remember. Behind her, Dad held the cake. Church friends filled the walkway, and Pastor Grant stood near the curb with empty hands. Mom lifted the hanger. Zoe should wear this for pictures. No, her smile stayed in place. Guests are here. They are here because you lied. A woman behind her lowered a foil pan and another stopped recording. Mom leaned closer. Do not do this in front of people. You brought people. Dad whispered, Brenda, we need to leave. She turned on him. We are not leaving our granddaughter's celebration. I stepped onto the porch and closed the door behind me. Zoe did not need 12 adults looking past me toward the stairs. There is no celebration, I said. I did not approve the baptism. Zoe asked for more time. My mother told her that hesitation meant yes. She told the church I had approved the ceremony and asked them not to call me. I had not. A man near the steps looked at Pastor Grant. He nodded. Our office confirmed that we received no direct consent from April. We relied on information we should have verified with her, and we have apologized to April and Zoe. Mom's face went white. You said this was private. You made it public, I said. She gripped the dress. Zoe wanted God. Zoe wanted more time. You filled her head after the fact. I opened the green folder. I showed the guests my email, Mom's reply, the church note, and the invitation with my name printed as host. This party was not reconciliation. You asked me to host it so my house, my food, and my silence could make your decision look like mine. Mom laughed once. It sounded brittle. Evidence, listen to yourself. I placed my phone on the porch rail and played the short section Zoe had approved. Her voice came through first. Can I wait until next time? Then Mom's voice answered. Everyone is here now. I stopped the recording before Zoe cried. Nobody spoke. Mom looked at the phone as if it had betrayed her. She was nervous. She was allowed to be nervous. She was allowed to wait. She is a child. Exactly. Mom raised the dress between us. I was trying to give her something permanent. You did. You gave her a memory where every adult's comfort mattered more than her uncertainty. Her eyes filled. I was afraid she would grow up with nothing. I watched you walk away from everything that held this family together. There it was, not only faith, reputation, fear, the belief that family stayed whole when everyone stood in the same room and said the same words. I did not walk away from everything, I said. I walked away from being told that love required obedience. She is my granddaughter. She is not your second chance with me. Mom's mouth opened. I gave her the written notice. You will not come to my house, her school, or her activities without an invitation. There will be no unsupervised contact. Any future relationship begins with counseling and an apology to Zoe that does not explain away what you did. Dad read over her shoulder. His face folded. April, please. You were the adult with the truck keys. He closed his eyes. Mom dropped the notice onto the cake box. You are choosing control over family. No, I am ending your control over mine. Then I said the sentence I had needed since the river. You did not teach her faith. You taught her that my no could be replaced by your yes. I took the new dress from her hand. I carried it to the curb and laid it across the cake box, then I opened my front door, not for the guests, for my daughter. Zoe stood just inside. She had removed her headphones, and she looked at Mom, then at the dresses, gifts, and faces. Do you want to say anything? I asked. She shook her head. Do you want anyone to come inside? Another shake. I nodded. Then we are done. I stepped back into the house and closed the door. The guests left within minutes. Some took their food. Some left it on the porch. Pastor Grant stayed long enough to tell Dad the church board still expected a meeting. Dad walked to his truck alone. Mom sat in the passenger seat with the new white dress across her lap. The cake remained by the curb until evening. Rain softened the blue letters and turned welcome into a streak. For 3 months, my parents had no contact with Zoe, and Mom sent letters. I returned the first 2 because they blamed me, and the third was different. She wrote, I was afraid Zoe would reject what saved me, and I made my fear sound like authority. I lied because I believed the result would excuse the method, and it did not. It was an apology. It was not a key. Dad began counseling before Mom did, and in his first letter to Zoe, he wrote one useful sentence. I heard you ask for your mother, and I stayed silent. Zoe kept that letter. She did not answer until she was ready. 4 months after the porch, Zoe agreed to one supervised meeting in a counselor's office. She chose the chair nearest the door and asked me to sit beside her. Mom began with the sentence the letters had avoided. I knew your mother had said no. I told myself your maybe meant yes, because I wanted the answer more than I wanted to hear you. Zoe looked at her for a long time. Did you think Dad wanted it too? Mom's face tightened. I used what I imagined he wanted because I knew it would matter to you. That was wrong. Dad did not hide behind Mom that day. I heard you ask for April, and I chose your grandmother's anger over your uncertainty. I should have taken you home. The counselor asked Zoe whether she wanted to respond. I do not want anybody to tell me what Dad thinks anymore, she said. Both of my parents agreed. Mom asked whether she could hug her. Zoe said no. Nobody corrected her, softened it, or asked her to reconsider. For the first time in that room, her no remained exactly what she meant. We left after 40 minutes. There was no photograph, no prayer, and no promise that the next visit would happen soon. That was what honest repair looked like in our family, smaller than a celebration and much harder to fake. New Mercy changed its policy for minors. A parent or legal guardian now had to confirm directly. Children were interviewed without the sponsoring adult beside them. The church also added a note to Zoe's record stating that verified parental consent had not been obtained. Nobody claimed paperwork could erase the river. They simply stopped letting the record erase the truth. 6 months later, Zoe asked to see the original dress, and we spread it across my bed. The cleaned hem looked pale where the mud had been. I do not want to keep the dress, she said. Can I keep the ribbon? Of course. She untied the blue ribbon and rolled it around her hand, and we donated the dress the next morning. The new one Mom brought to the party had gone home with her, and that felt right. It belonged to her version, not ours. Zoe still asks questions about faith. Sometimes we visit a church, and sometimes we stay home and make pancakes. She knows she can choose, change her mind, wait, or ask more. My parents now see her in supervised visits with a counselor's guidance, and progress is slow. That is not punishment. Trust should move at the speed of the person who lost it. I used to believe peace meant nobody raised their voice. Now I know peace can also mean a locked door, a clear record, and a child who no longer has to guess which adult feeling she must protect. The white dress left our house in a cardboard box. My daughter's questions stayed. This time they belonged to her. Tell me where you would have drawn the line.